This is Orlando Sentinel Now.
Hello and welcome. It's Monday, August 2nd, and this is Orlando Sentinel Now. Today we're talking about unvaccinated pregnant women. We're also talking about the Kissimmee River front restoration effort and where you can find tasty treats here in Orlando. I'm your host, Joe Mario Pedersen, and joining me today, I have health reporter Caroline Catherman, I have environmental reporter Kevin Spear, and food columnist Amy Drew Thompson. Thank you all so much for being here today. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. Caroline, coming to you first here for one of your latest headlines. Doctors urge vaccinations amid rising hospitalizations of unvaccinated pregnant women. Can you tell us more about what we're seeing out there?
Yeah, so at Advent Health a couple weekends ago, 25% of the people intubated with COVID in the ICU were pregnant. And this is something that doctors did not start seeing until just a few weeks ago with the rise of cases throughout the state of Florida. So obviously, admissions for everyone are increasing, but pregnant women are more at risk of having severe complications of COVID-19 than non-pregnant women.
Gotcha. And as far as the proportion of unvaccinated women that we're seeing hospitalized due to COVID-19, what portion of them actually are unvaccinated versus those who are vaccinated?
At Advent Health, all of the pregnant women that are in the hospital with COVID-19 are unvaccinated. At Orlando Health, it's definitely still the majority. And most people who are hospitalized are unvaccinated, over 90% at both hospitals, but nationwide, there is evidence that pregnant women have lower rates of vaccination than the average population.
So, in regard to those who are in the hospital right now, I mean, how severe are these cases for these women?
From what the doctors were telling me, some of them need to be intubated, so put on a ventilator that breathes for them. A few times they've actually had to do a C-section for a preterm delivery because the fetus was in distress. So
Hmm.
pretty severe, but for those in the hospital, they're having all the same negative outcomes, and sometimes worse than anyone else who gets COVID.
Now, from your report, one of the big things I was gathering was that as much as doctors are battling COVID-19, it seems as though that they're also battling misconceptions about the vaccine as well. What kinds of misconceptions are they dealing with?
A lot of the women that are coming in are understandably nervous about putting something new in their body and they feel like it hasn't been tested. But the thing is, the vaccine has gone through rigorous testing, and doctors say again and again that the effects of COVID are way worse than any effects of the vaccine. Another huge misconception is that it causes infertility, which is completely unfounded. There's absolutely no evidence for that, but doctors say they've been seeing that. They've been seeing women who are afraid that it could lead to miscarriage, another misconception that's completely unfounded.
Pretty big story that hopefully we start seeing the opposite trend of this starting to go down in weeks, but one that will continue to follow. If you're interested in finding out more, take a look at Caroline's work at orlandosentinel.com right now. Caroline, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, Kevin, I want to come to you now for a really big story. One that is, as you've described it, it is a river restoration project that has been unseen ever before. We're talking about the Kissimmee River and how it's a story in decades in the making. And to truly understand it, we got to take a look back at the 1960s. So let's start there, where all of this began.
Going back to that point in time, there was a sense that the Kissimmee River, like most of Mother Nature in Florida, could be controlled by humankind and their steam shovels and bulldozers. There's some worry about flooding along the Kissimmee River. It runs from South Osceola County down to Lake Okeechobee, so very much an interior of the state. And the Corps of Engineers got busy in the 1960s, and at a staggering cost, turned 100 miles of Kissimmee River, a curly Q path of river, into a very straight ditch, 50 miles long. And the result of that was, in the 1960s, immediately seen as a disaster for Florida's environment.
You know, these canals that were added to it by the Corps as a means of, I guess it was flood protection, as it was originally called. Um, these canals, you described them as amputations and causing serious harm. Exactly what kind of harm did we see as a result?
Yeah, so it was one canal. And just calling it a canal kind of understates things. The thing was 300 feet wide and 30 feet deep. It was massive. And by taking the Kissimmee River's water and putting all of that water in that canal, which shot straight down to Lake Okeechobee, it had the effect of sucking all the water out of this massive floodplain, out of a massive amount of wetlands. So no water in the wetlands, and pretty promptly a lot of wetlands died. They were filled in many cases. And with that, the loss of fish and wildlife and spectacular populations of birds that Florida has long been known for. It became a dead zone with a 90% loss of all kinds of species along that Kissimmee River Valley.
So talk to me now about this rebirth for this river, because this is a massive project that again took decades to plan out. How did this come to be?
Yeah, so if you've lived in Florida for a little while and you know just a few things about Florida's environmental story, this is one that you should know about, because while it is off the beaten path, not near many cities, almost immediately after the Corps of Engineers did its deed to the Kissimmee River, there was an astounding collaboration across political parties at the federal level and the state level to fix that damage. And so through the 70s and 80s, there were some really serious studies that looked at whether, well, if humankind messes with Mother Nature, turns out bad things can happen. So they documented that through the 80s. Congress then stepped up in the early 90s and approved a restoration project along with the money. And construction started in 1999 or 1998 for what would turn out to be more than 2 decades of construction. You probably can't find many construction projects in the entire state of Florida that are bigger than this one.
I have one last question for you on this, Kevin, because as you point out in your report, this restoration project, for as big as it is, it has deeper implications for restoring other areas as well. How
Yeah.
has this become kind of a spearheader in that?
Well, water in the fast-growing state of Florida is money and wealth and power and resource, and everybody wants every bit of water that's available in the state. And that water in the Kissimmee River drains off starts by draining off streets near downtown Orlando and the west side of downtown Orlando, and then it flows south. It becomes the Shingle Creek and other creeks. It flows through Osceola County, and Osceola County is fast growing and thirsty for water and wants some of that water. But more pressing today is when that water slams into Lake Okeechobee, it causes flooding concerns and pollution concerns. And there's a big spillover effect from that. And we can't get into it here. That would take quite a while. But what's happened with the Kissimmee River and Lake Okeechobee has been a flat out disaster for the east and west coasts, for the Everglades. And by fixing the Kissimmee River, you give some hope that the people of Southeast Florida, the big cities there, the Everglades and Florida Bay, will have some quality water in decades to come.
Definitely one of the bigger environmental stories that you'll hear this year. And there's certainly more details to it. So be sure to take a look at Kevin's work online. Kevin, thanks a lot, man.
Thank you.
All right, Amy Drew, let's bring this home. It's noon. People are hungry. And luckily, we got a column here about tasty treats that you can find all around Orlando. It's a column that covers 5 different ones, but today we're going to go over 2. And I want to start off first with some breakfast tacos that you have a recommendation for. Where can we find them?
Ryan Manning from MX Taco in the Milk District just started a new breakfast truck not too long ago. It's parking in the lot behind Wally's on Mills. And in it, you can get all kinds of great breakfast treats, all of them with a Mexican spin. And that egg and chorizo taco, good stuff.
I'm all about egg and chorizo, so that is definitely a must on the list. But all right, so as I said before, we're a little closer to lunch right now. So with that in mind, the Nilbog. First off, what is it and where can we find it?
It's a pizza. Yeah, the Goblin is a noodle dish that they've been making at Orlando Meats. Very spicy, house-made noodles, a really nice fiery curry, and they were just kind of thinking about it one day and decided to turn it into a pizza. And I have to be honest with you, I love the noodle dish. I think I like it better as a pizza. It just works. The crust is amazing. You've got the cheese in there that kind of tamps down the spice a little bit, but this is definitely one that folks who like the heat will want to try.
I want to come back to that because you specifically pointed out that in crafting a pizza, some people may focus too much on the toppings, but really it's all about the dough. And the dough for the nilbog is something that really spoke to you here.
Yeah, they've been killing it with the pizza crust since they started doing their recessed pizza offshoot. And with the curry sauce, this crust really almost feels like a wonderful Indian bread. So it's just soaking up that crust. And then you've got this crazy crispy fried chicken on top of it. It's one of those weird Frankensteins that they come up with that just seems to work.
Well, there you go. You got a couple options right there. And if you're interested in finding other options, all 5 of Amy Drew's recommendations are available at orlandosentinel.com, where, of course, you can find all the other stories that we talked about here today as well. For those of you who are subscribers to the Orlando Sentinel, thank you so much for supporting our work and supporting local journalism. If you want to become a supporter, it's easy to do so. All you need to do is visit orlandosentinel.com/subscribe. But as for OSN, that is our show here for today. A big thank you to Caroline, Kevin, and Amy Drew for keeping us filled in what's going on in our community. We'll be back again with more news tomorrow at noon. We'll see you then. Stay healthy and stay safe.
Watch Orlando Sentinel Now live every weekday at noon on our Facebook page and on orlandosentinel.com.